and you can answer this however you can. They said, have you found it harder to get a horror film booked at festivals in comparison to other genres? I mean, would you know? But, I mean, in other words, how is the reception, I guess? And go ahead.
So I was just going to say, I think what we've learned really is that the best reception we've gotten is from horror festivals as opposed to artistic festivals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously, like, ideally, you always want your movie to kind of cross over, right? Ideally, we'd love to have people who weren't not just horror fans kind of getting into the movie. But we found definitely that the horror-friendly genres were more, and some obviously, like, some things that are really highbrow. I mean, you get an idea of the other films that they've kind of programmed in the past. You kind of get an idea of what their tendencies are. So I think it's good to do your research again, like, just be proactive about knowing which ones you're applying for, and just looking to see what else they've programmed. If they're programming, romantic comedies 99% of the time, that's really not the one for Long Pigs to go to.
And when it comes to the other, like, let's say the blue chip festivals, if we're talking, Cannes, Sundance, Toronto as well. I mean, it really, a lot of that, it comes down to what they're looking for in that year. Unfortunately for us, there was a movie that came out the year before ours called Behind the Mask, which we had heard from a couple of the big festivals basically saying people that, we loved your film, but we had just screened this one last year, and it's kind of was sort of a horror mockumentary, so we don't want to do the same thing 2 years in a row. And that, it can come down to, which person is screening, your film. And we've had even when it comes to getting distributions, we had a guy at Alliance Atlantis who was like, I'm going to champion your film. This is going to be fantastic. And I'm going to, he was a VP, and basically it got up to one of the presidents, some board meeting up there, and eventually it just stopped. It was like, sorry guys, you know what I mean? I love your film, but it's the type of film too with this one. When you don't have stars in your film, it makes getting seen everywhere, whether it be festivals or just normal forms of distribution, incredibly difficult. It just, the biggest question we get from most people when we were going around in the early days of the festivals to these markets was, they're saying, who's in it? You know what I mean? And we say, well, nobody, but sort of already you can see the glazed look of disinterest going over their face, right? It is a star-driven industry.
And it's too bad.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's too bad because with your film having a star in it, I don't think would make it.
It wouldn't work, and we couldn't have made it, quite frankly. Because half the time it was literally, myself, Nathan, and Anthony, just riffing, you know what I mean, right. And just making some stew or doing something like that.
Calling him on a day's notice and just picking him up and,
Yeah. Saying, let's try this, we'll see what we can get. He had his basic uniform that he wore, but the movie couldn't have been made in a traditional, and nor would it ever have been touched by a major studio in about 300 years, you know what I mean? It would have been the last thing they'd ever try to make. Just because there's so much possible negative reaction.
What kind of shooting schedule did you actually have? Did you have a production? When you say it took 7 years, how long was your actual shooting phase? And did you plan it out as we'll do 15 days over a period of time?
Yeah, in the early days we had call sheets and schedules and everything. I tell you, we had actually a half a proper crew, and I guess we shot most of it in December 2003, Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
And we had, I guess about 15 days practically where we got a majority of the stuff, but we always knew that there was going to be big things that we'd have to basically get down the road. Then came reshooting, which, we had finished the original ending of the script, had a large media sequence where it started out with serious local news talking about the grisly nature of things, and eventually once the filmmaker's tapes are discovered, it almost basically montaged or channel flipped into an Entertainment Tonight type sensationalist thing, and it was a lot of money.
Well, we had rented a whole studio that had all these different rooms, and we built like a couple of different news rooms, a cooking show room. So we sit a fireside chat kind of room, and we had tons of crew, build sets, dollies. did all this stuff for this big kind of multimedia sequence to finish off the movie. And of course, the most difficult thing to do in a movie, even if you have $100 million, is to do realistic-looking news.
Unless you're Paul Verhoeven, it's very tough to pull off fake news.
So a quarter of our budget and all that time and all the big blast, and we ended up cutting the entire thing from the film.
Yeah, we ended up, so, basically our first cut of the film, I guess, was done about a year later, which included all this news sequence. And for all different reasons, people just hated our ending. They just, I think people ultimately felt like it was kind of puerile and kind of, two, young guys thumbing their nose at an industry that they're not even really a part of yet, and all that other sort of stuff. But
they were right.
Man, yeah, they were probably right. So basically, there was a period where we were trying to edit around that. That's when basically we created or expanded, I guess you could say, the character played by Roger King, who's our radio host, who really strings things together and basically came back and did his confrontation with Anthony, our killer, at the end of the movie. And we have to just give our hats off to Roger, who, with somebody else too, that we basically gave some talking points to, and he just went in there and did it, so naturally. There's actually an uncut version of the interview with Anthony on the DVD, because I was just so impressed. They basically riffed for 13 minutes straight, and it was one of the hardest things to cut down to, a couple minutes so that it could be reasonably watchable. But, it's a long process. So the initial shooting, I guess, was eventually to get all that done was about 3 years. Then we had our festival run officially in 2007, and at that point our heads were filled with dreams of getting the, $500,000 up front, and, we were talking to people who were like, don't take any deal unless there's money up front or people don't know they're serious. We actually had a number of offers from various people, and it just we never ended up picking one of those offers, which may or may not be, it may not have worked out, but the fortunate R squared, and we've got somebody who, like us, is just believes in the movie and wants as many people to see it as possible, which is the best thing that we can do.
We've got about 14 minutes left right now, 14 minutes left, but can we talk a little bit about that? I mean, the notion of, trying to get a negative pickup deal and then not, I mean, what, or why you chose not to, and
well, I guess
you don't have to get into too many specifics if you don't want to, but I mean, just the kind of the trials and tribulations of that particular aspect of your film.
Well, I guess, you can say that once something gains even just a little bit of success, that anybody who's had anything to do with it, especially on an executive level, would love to kind of wants to get to put their stamp on things and try to get involved, let's say. So we ended up in a situation where there was basically a committee of us instead of just a couple of us. And, again, without trying to go through the whole soap opera, it was a soap opera. You know what I mean? That's basically the long and the short of it, is there was, a lot of consternation about which way things should be done. People.
I think looking back, like with a first film, when you're doing it that way, you're not doing it for the money. You're never going to get that deal with the big money unless it's like 1 in a million. So I think for me looking back, I think I would have the main thing was to get it out there and get it seen. That's number one. Don't try to be a deal maker or try to think you're bigger than you are.
Well, not even necessarily you. You just have to also beware of people who kind of swarm around you like sharks and say, "Hey, buddy, I'm going to make you a deal, and don't worry, I don't get on the phone if I don't think it's going to be less than $50,000." And people fill your head with ideas, and then it all turns out to be, kind of garbage.
Yeah, I mean, and also I think the most important thing, and I've heard this before anyway, is don't worry about agents or managers or any of that stuff. Get a good lawyer.
Right,
that's